Okay, hello everyone. This is Bryan Wilton from InterDyn BMI. We're doing our GP 2016 R2 product tour again today. And this is kind of a monthly thing or thereabouts that we do that kind of repeats for people that would like to see Dynamics GP 2016 or have actually never seen Microsoft Dynamics GP ever. And so this is a good way to kind of get a feel for what the system looks like and how it responds and so forth. And so anyway, we're going to not really do anything with PowerPoint. There's no real presentation. We're really just going to spend time inside of the software. And so I've gone ahead and logged in already. And so I do like to point out that I'm logged in as a system administrator. And so you kind of see the SA, like SA's homepage, and you see my user down here in the corner. So keep that in mind that there's no security being applied today. And so I can go anywhere and do anything. In real life, of course, different users will have different access to the system and may or may not see all of the components. And I should also point out that I'm logged into a sample company here called Fabricam. And you'll notice in the drop down that's the only company there, but I could actually have many, many more companies. And so there's no limit on how many companies we can set up. And there's no Microsoft doesn't keep track of that or charge for entities or companies. I just happen to have one set up in this environment today, but I could have many, many more. And so when I log in, regardless of my security, so whether I'm admin or a very tightly restricted user, I do land on what's called my homepage. And so my homepage here is really kind of my own personal menu system. And the idea is that I will bring everything onto my homepage that I work with on a regular basis. And so you see lots and lots of things on my homepage today. And I'll scroll down to some of these. You see I've got the ability to enter time and expenses into a project if that were something I was working on. I have just time card entry, so no project, but just want to enter time. I have purchase requisitions, and we'll come back to some of this stuff as we kind of talk through this, where I can enter a requisition for something to be purchased, and you'll see I've got one down here that looks like it's been submitted. And that's one in the saved box there. And this also gives me kind of a snapshot of these areas. And so you kind of start to see the Windows 8 / Windows 10 tile kind of overview here in some of these areas. And so Microsoft has started to build kind of that tile approach into the ERP system. And then my reports area up here is really exactly what it says. This is an area that I put my reports that I run every day. And why would I do that? Well, you'll notice I've got a reports menu up here with all the different modules that I have turned on and have access to. And yes, I could drill into these menus, and I could grab the trial balance, and then from there I have yet more options. And so there's about 1,000 or 1,200 reports kind of on the menu here. If I had everything actually turned on in data. And so that's kind of the traditional way, we'll call it the old-fashioned way to get reports. And some of us that have been working with the software for 20-some years still actually use that way because that was the only way for many, many moons. But a newer way really is to pull those reports that I use every day onto my homepage, and then with one click I can actually generate or execute the report. And so I'll run the AP age trial balance. So this is my accounts payable open list here, and make that just a little bit bigger. So so this is kind of a traditional report, traditional meaning this one's been here since day one. They're all, nice and graphical, but they are just kind of static reports. Now I have mine set to print to the screen so that you all can see it, but I could just as easily have had this go out to a printer if I don't care to look at it. I just want something in hard copy, and so that's an option as well. Or of course I could have it go to both if I want to see it and print it at the same time. That's really up to me. But as I generate these kind of traditional style reports, and there's no drill down, this is just static kind of numbers on paper, so to speak. But sometimes I do want to move these on somewhere else, and so I can click the send to here, and then I can send this report out either in PDF if I have the ability to create a PDF, which on this machine you'll notice I do, that's lit up, or I could send it out in text, which of course is not going to be quite as good looking, but text will always be available. And so I can package this up and email it to someone else in or outside of the organization. It just opens my email client and attaches the report onto the email and waits for me to put in the to or BCC or whatever it might be. So I can do that with any report here that I generate. I can also print it. So if I decide I look at this on the screen and yeah, this is something I really need in paper, when I click the print button, then every printer or any kind of a network device, whether it be here I have PDF, I have Adobe PDF to actually look like a printer to Windows. I could have a scanner. And so any of these devices are available. So if I have one of those network copiers, it's also a scanner. I could send this directly out to the scanner and let it scan. So the point is that Dynamics GP is not really doing anything except connecting us to our Windows printers. And so I can make that decision of where I want this to go during the printing process, and I don't have to predefine where my reports are going to go. And so all the reports, kind of the traditional off-the-menu reports, will look and feel this exact same way, whether it's a receivables aging or a payables aging like what we have here. It could be a general ledger trial balance or an inventory listing or valuation. And so they're all going to kind of have the same flavor to them, and they're all going to work the same way. That's one style of reporting. And so Microsoft is always about choice. Sometimes people say there's too many choices. They've given me too many options. But you'll see as we kind of go through this that there's lots and lots of ways to get to the data, and so that's really just one of them. So as we move over into the quick links now, this is the same idea in this tile, but these are things that I work in every day. So windows that I might want to open or menu choices that I spend my time in. And you might notice that these tiles are kind of floating, and so I have the ability to rearrange these to my own liking. I don't have to just take it the way someone told me that it has to look. And so very, very simple to rearrange things, as you can kind of see here. And we all, of course, then would have a different look and feel and layout of our homepage, because we're all going to be doing different things in the organization, and we all have different screens that we work in and reports we run and so forth. And so the quick links really are those things that I would work on. So these are kind of menu shortcuts, if you will. And so, if I enter accounts payable on a daily basis, I can click on the AP entry link here and get to my transaction entry for accounts payable. And so just kind of bring one up there so you can kind of see what it looks like. The windows all kind of have the same look and feel as well. I happen to have the required fields turned on, and you see those in red. That's just a setup option for me, for my user account. But a lot of people turn these on, especially when they're new to the software and they're learning it. That way they know when they go into a particular window that they have to provide the system with those things that are in red. So we need those things in the database to be able to proceed. Now, you could make additional fields required. Of course, you can't turn off what Microsoft requires because that keeps the database integrity up. But if you decided that you wanted something required, you could certainly flag that as a company requirement versus a system requirement. Some people will make those a different color. Some people will just make those red as well, just so as users are putting data or capturing data into the system, they know kind of what the minimum requirements are. as they move in and out of the windows. So you'll see the data entry windows have kind of the traditional look and feel of Microsoft. We have the ribbon across the top, much like you would see in current versions of Word and Excel and Outlook, PowerPoint, and so on. So the Office, Microsoft Office products. And so that's kind of by design, is that, you know, you can toggle back and forth between any Microsoft product. And yes, the choices, of course, are going to be completely different because, you know, Word's a word processing system and Dynamics GP is an accounting system or ERP system, and so obviously there's different choices, but you kind of have the same flavor of how to navigate through, and so, you know, you don't have to completely relearn something that is totally foreign when you log into it. And even the navigation area over here on the left looks a lot like the one that we would have in Outlook with mail and calendar and contacts and task list and so forth that we see if we're Outlook users, and that'll even have some similarity to it there. And so a couple of things to point out, and I've got a lot of things here that I work with every day, and so you'll see you know, quite a few things here. But a couple of things that might be of interest are the system can do allocations, and so that does get becomes a question a lot, is can I allocate expenses across different departments or divisions, so to speak. And so here I have set up my rent, and this is called a fixed allocation, and it's fixed because every time I post something or charge something to my rent expense account, which is 000-6180-00, every time I hit that account with an entry, whether it's payables or a journal entry or whatever it might be, the system is actually going to take that transaction and reallocate it based on these percentages into these other 6 accounts. And so, you know, this is like Department 100, maybe Division 100, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so this is called a fixed allocation because every time I use 000-6180, I really want Dynamics GP to come to this table and say, yeah, I don't really want you to post it there, but what I do want you to do is split that up into these other 6 accounts based on this fixed percentage that goes to each account. And so that's pretty common. We can have unlimited allocations that are set up this way. So no trouble with that at all. I should point out while we're in here, though, that my account string here, my 000-6180-00, that's just something in my sample data. That's not anything that we have to live with or we're stuck with. And so that's really just kind of how I built my system. We can actually have up to 66 alphanumeric characters. In fact, let me just back up here to where that is so you can see it as I'm talking about it. And so in my company setup here, you'll see that I'm using a total of 9 out of the 66 that I could use, and 66 is maybe a little aggressive. I've been doing this for 22 years. I've never had anybody want to use all 66, and if they did, I would quickly talk them out of it. But you know, we could legitimately go up to 66 characters. I'm using 9, and then we can also have up to 10 segments or 10 dashes. And so I'm only using 3 segments, and the first one was the 3 digits, so that was my 000, and then my account, kind of the middle segment, was the 4 digits, and that was my 6180, and then the last was 2, and I just had 00 there. And so these could be really anything that I want. So you know, if I said, hey, the first one's really going to represent division, of course the middle one's probably going to be the account, and then maybe I had a sub-account on the end. And so really up to us on kind of how we lay this out and what we name those. And we do have lots of folks that do use, you know, sometimes 6 or 7 different segments, and they do get up sometimes in the 20 or 30 characters in their account string. And so, you know, that's not uncommon. But the 66 and 10 is kind of the upper limit. That's really one of the only limits, probably the only limit we have in the system is we can't exceed that 66 and 10. And so back to our homepage, we looked at fixed allocations. The flip side of that is we have the ability to do a variable allocation. And so a variable allocation is really still allocating a posting amount to a certain account, but we don't want to go in and hard code those percentages. We want it to vary, and we want the posting to vary based on some other number. And so what we do here is we use what we call a unit account. And so let me bring those up so you can see what the unit accounts look like. So a unit account in Dynamics GP is just a non-financial account. And so here you see that we have lots of non-dollars and cents accounts available here that I've set up. Square footage is always a popular one. Head count by certain department is one that a lot of people seem to use. Maybe the number of computers in a certain department. We could, in this case, use number of telephones in a certain area. And so we can track account information that are not dollars and cents, but other things, so non-financial, and that's why they're called unit accounts, is we're just tracking a quantity of sorts by something other than a dollar and cent, a debit or a credit. And so in my variable allocation window, we are going to use utility expense now, but I've listed the 6 accounts, very similar to my rent. I've listed those 6 accounts that I want to really post utilities to, and so same idea is when I post into 000619000, I don't really want the system to hold the dollars there, but I want it to come out and redistribute or reallocate into my different departments or divisions. Same GL account, but just different location in the system here. But I'm not going to hard code in the percentages. What I'm going to do is say, when I click on one of these, you'll see this unit account open up here. And so when I drill back, and by the way, the blue underline, we talked about the red, the blue underline is, that means there's a drill back, there's more information there, and provided I have security, I can drill down and see what's there. And so, and actually make changes to it in my case, because I am the administrator. And so here, when I drill down into 19020, we see that this is my employee count for that particular department. Now, I don't have any I don't have any numbers in there. I don't have any quantities in there, so nothing would actually post. But what I'm doing is saying in the variable allocation, I really want the system to look to these unit accounts, add up all the employees in all of these accounts, and then figure out how much 49020 was of the total employee count. So this is service and installation. So what percent was that this month? And then I want to use that percentage to actually allocate utilities. And so the variable just means that we can vary it based on an entry that we make to our non-financial or our unit accounts every month. And so those are kind of the two capabilities of allocating expenses across the system. You'll notice kind of working kind of through the home page here, we have the ability to do, as I mentioned earlier, a payroll. So payroll and HR is all included in the software, direct deposit, and so forth. And if we're using payroll and we wanted users to actually enter time into the system, they could do that. And so we can also produce W-2s, obviously, out of the system. And so if I, as a user now, maybe I'm just a lowly employee and I don't otherwise have access to Dynamics GP, we do have kind of a very, very light kind of employee-only, it's called an employee self-service user that's very, very, very inexpensive. And so that way we could hand out that really light kind of cheap user to the employees, and all they would be able to do is log in and pick up a copy of their W-2, which I'm doing here, enter time if we had them do that, make changes to their withholdings, or if they move and they have a new address, or maybe they have a life event situation, like they have a kid or they're married or divorced, they can come in and start the process of getting that information over to payroll and HR. Of course, those folks still have to approve it and kind of make it permanent, but the employees could actually initiate that, so they're not constantly filling out forms and bugging the payroll people to make those updates. And so here I have one W-2 out there, and so I came in. It happens to be mine, and so when I click on view, then as the employee now, I could actually see my W-2, and if I'm at the bank Saturday afternoon trying to get a car loan and they need the last few pay stubs or last year's W-2, they literally could make a connection or possibly do this off their phone or their iPad and grab that information and get it off to the bank and not have to bother the payroll folks that they need copies of things. And so lots of options there as well. Of course, we do track paid time off if we are using the payroll or the HR system. We have the ability to track the time off that people might have, and we don't necessarily have to do that in the software. There's an app for that, so you'll see that I just quickly opened that app, and this app is out in the Play Store for Android. It's available for Windows. I'm running Windows 10 on this computer, and so you see the Windows version. This is also available for iOS, and so you could literally right now go download this app and look at it in kind of demo mode. And so so this app really is just to get something on the mobile device that people could come in and capture time or put in for a day off. And we see over here my PTO. It's really designed for PTOs more so than time, because there's not an approval routing for time, but there is an approval routing for sick and vacation. And so I can see my sick and vacation balance. And so if I am going to take a vacation day tomorrow, or you'll see a half a day based on my settings, I'm going to take the whole day off, and so I put that in, and then that would route based on my setup here back to if someone needs to approve that. If they don't, of course, then it goes directly back into the HR folks. But so just something that's kind of in the box that if we were using the HR part of the software, that would be available to us as well. As we kind of get over here on the right into more of the procurement, I mentioned earlier we can do requisitions, obviously, that roll into purchase orders. And so you'll see here that I had a requisition that was started here, so I can click on that, and that takes me actually to the requisition window. And so here I've put a requisition in. I can view the history of the approvals, and so there's of course workflow that's attached to this, because that's the idea, is we want the requisition to go somewhere or multiple places so people can approve this. And they don't have to be Dynamics GP users to approve. They don't even have to know we're using Dynamics GP to do all of this. Most approvers just do their approvals or rejections through email. And so, if I am a GP user, okay, that's fine. If I'm not, then I typically will send this out. They'll get an email with a little snapshot of the document and with the buttons on it. You might have seen this in Outlook, where you can approve things in Outlook, or you could vote in Outlook. Sometimes people will send an email that have voting buttons. That's really the functionality that Microsoft is using here to get the workflow for requisitions out to people and approved. And so, here's just the history of this particular requisition. I originated it. I let it actually reject. I came in and resubmitted it, and it rejected again. I resubmitted it, rejected, and so I kind of got into a loop here because I didn't really set up an approver on the other end, but I wanted to build up enough history that you could see that the system is tracking all of the different routes and paths that this transaction takes before it ultimately could be approved. And once it's approved, then I have the ability to create the purchase order directly from the requisition. So there's no rekeying. Sometimes the PO person has to go in and maybe they change the vendor or they change the pricing, or in this case, you'll see I don't even have a vendor here, so I just left it blank. I want one of this, but I don't know who we buy it from. That's purchasing's area, so I'm just telling you what I want. And so, you know, purchasing has to kind of fix that stuff or add that stuff. They might change the shipping and of course the GL coding and so forth. And so, so this is also available with that very light, kind of inexpensive employee self-service user. They can also initiate a purchase requisition, and so that gives them the ability to log in and use just that particular piece of it, really that window, and kick off their requisition and send it into the workflow. And so I talked, kind of scrolling back up here, I talked a little bit about reporting, and so a couple other areas of reporting. You might have noticed this kind of business analyzer section, and I'm going to make this a little bit larger so we can talk about it. And so when I click on the little icon there, it changes the focus of my page so that the business analyzer section really is kind of the main focal point when I land on my home page. And it'll stay that way. I can log out and go home, come back tomorrow or Monday, and open up Dynamics GP, and the focus will still be on the business analyzer. So it kind of remembers how I like to have my pages laid out. And everything else is kind of tucked off here. And of course I could go to the other side or the bottom, but I just have mine going off to the right. And so the business analyzer really is taking the data, the underlying data, and yes, we could run an aging on receivables in this case, and we could look at the data and we could figure out, you know, where we stand, and we could see who's past due and what it was compared to last period or the same month last year. We could do all that through a series of reports. But the business analyzer really takes that information and it puts it into a snapshot, and sometimes it's a chart. Sometimes it's graphs, what we would call a KPI or a key performance indicator. Sometimes it's just the data like this one that's really just very highly summarized. And you can imagine, you know, the higher up in the organization someone is, the less detail they typically will care to see. And so these charts and graphs and key performance metrics are really designed for kind of the C-level people. You know, the CFO might want something like this, or the CEO, where the accountants and the bookkeepers and inventory clerks and shop foremen and so forth, typically they want to see lots and lots of detail. And so this is just a way to allow people that they may be Dynamics GP users, and so if they are, they could plug into their home page, this business analyzer, and then see these types of things. And so let me just scroll through. I've got a couple of them here. There's a tour, about 220, 230 of these that are available. I just have a half a dozen or so put onto my home page. And so, you know, this one's a good example of the cash position. Now, it's not telling me every dollar that's in every bank account, but as a higher level person, I might look at this and I might sense that there's a little bit of a problem here. And so that's that graph is not trending the right way when we're talking about cash. And so it looks like I'm going to have to call the bank here pretty quick and get some money. Cash position, so if I want to see more the numbers, I can, you know, view that. And again, summarized report, I could go print a report or two off the menu or look at some screens and get this data. But this is a really quick way to kind of get a snapshot of what's happening kind of under the hood, so to speak. And so this is good, and this is fun if I'm a GP user. But you know, many times the people, as I said, that want this data, they're not users of the software. And so Microsoft has made this available outside of the system. And I'm running this through Internet Explorer, but this works on really any browser. It works fine on Chrome or Firefox. You know, I'm not sure it works on Netscape anymore, and some of you probably won't know what that is, but that was the browser when browsers first came out. And so it's pretty agnostic to the technology, but I'm kind of drilling in here now, and again, I've got security to all of this. Every user might not have this level of security, and so I've got a folder here for all the different modules in my GP system, and here I've got a bunch of reports that, trial balances, journal entry reports, and so forth. The same types of reports that I could run inside of GP could be run outside of the system, so I don't need a user to actually log in and do it. I can go do it myself through a browser. Now, if you can get to your network from your mobile device, maybe your Android phone, you could actually do this on your phone or your iPad or your iPhone. So, as long as we know who you are, in other words, you have a connection to the network, then we can render this information to you. And so I'm going to go into the charts and KPIs, and so these are all the charts and dashboards that are just part of financial, so just really kind of hardcore accounting stuff here, not payables, not receivables, not inventory, not fixed assets, not payroll or HR. This is just finance stuff, so general ledger, sometimes banking information, so bank reconciliation and so forth. And this KPI and cash, I think it's this one we're seeing. And so I'm going to actually request this now through the browser, and you noticed it took just a couple of seconds there because we're not storing anything here. We have to go get the data. And so here you'll see that regardless of where I access the information, whether it's inside of my Dynamics GP or in this case happens to be from the browser, I have access to the same data. So it's all reading the same database. And so this allows our executives and management group to see those things without bothering us in accounting. So they can go get what they want when they want it, and they don't actually need a user, so they don't have to pay for a user license to actually get into the software. And so that's a very popular way to report on data as well today, and much nicer looking in some cases than some of the traditional style reports. And so that kind of brings us to the last section of our home page, and this is my reminder area. And so these are all the things that I have set up, and again, keep in mind, this is all just for me. You all would have your own customized homepage based on what you do and what you have the security to see. But this is all just stuff that I look at. And so my reminder area here is you'll see as I hover over a lot of things happening here. I've got some past due customers, and so when I click on that, that takes me to what we call Smart List, and Smart List is yet another way to query data out of the system, but not in direct report format, but just kind of the raw data. Microsoft realizes, rightfully so, they can't possibly figure out what we all want to look at in the format that we want to look at it in. And so, they built 1,000 or so reports. We have a couple hundred SQL reports, which are the business analyzer reports that we just looked at through the browser. And then we have Smart List. And so this really is, again, for us to have kind of free form on just get me the data I want, no more, no less, and I'll decide what format or layout that I want it in. And so here's just a list of past due customers. Of course, we have kind of the Excel functionality here. So if I want to see, who owes me the most money, I can sort on the current amount. So this is the current amount due, and this was the original invoice. And so you see like this Barry Medical here, the invoice was $58,209. They only owe me about $36,000 of it, so that's good, but they still owe me $36,000. And so so this is good. We could, we created a list here. I could do something with this. I could print it. So if I wanted to print this off or send it out to a file, I could do that. I might want to move this to Excel as an option. And so once I kind of have what I want on the screen, if I just click the Excel button one time, then you'll see that opened on my other screen here, of course. And so that brings me over to traditional Excel. And You can see it. And so all the system did was dump everything that was in my smart list out into Excel. And notice here I've got my decimals set up to 5 places. That's just me, so most of the time it will come over in what you're normally used to seeing. I just have that set to 5 to show people that we can handle 5 inside of the software. But once I'm over here, I'm in Excel, and so if I want to put totals on this and do anything with it, any kind of slicing and dicing, it's Excel. And so I've got the full features there. This is not an export and then try to import and slice up the columns so that they fit. None of that. It's a direct integration over into Excel. And so that's kind of a nice way to do reporting as well. So let me go behind the scenes here. So you say, okay, well, I don't necessarily need who owes me how much money. So when we take a peek kind of behind the curtain here, so to speak, we see all the different kind of pieces of the system, and so all the different modules, if you will. And again, based on my security, I can drill into any of these. So if we go into purchasing, maybe let's pick on vendors a little bit. And so here's a nice demographic list of vendors. And this would be nice if I was going to send out a holiday card, but we want to do something with this. And so now this is really the power of SmartList inside of the software. Is we'll go up under columns and we'll clean this up. I don't care about phone number. I actually don't even care about vendor ID. I kind of know them by name. And so that's good. I'll clean that up. But now I want to add some things. And so let's pull in the 1099 information here. So I'm going to grab my 1099 amount year to date and the type of 1099, and those would be helpful, and especially a couple of months ago when we might be doing 1099s. But really what I want to do is find out if I have their federal tax ID number, and I happen to know the tax ID number field is called tax ID number, and so that one's kind of important. So I want to see it right up here by vendor name. Now, you might want something totally different, and that's the beauty of this tool, is we can all kind of do our own thing, or we can share each other's work. So if I go to the trouble of building this, you can use it, you can see it. I could stop you from modifying it because I don't necessarily want you to change what I've done, but you could certainly run what I've put together here if you wanted to, or if I allow you to. And so here, this is good, still kind of busy here. I got a lot of people I haven't even paid at all this year, and a lot of those are not set up for 1099, which doesn't matter because I haven't paid them. So now we need to do a little filtering here. So what I want to do is say if the 1099 amount, and I'm going to say is greater than 600, so that's where we have a 1099 requirement for the accountants on the line here, and so that's fine. But I want to further slice this up and say, well, show me my 1099 miscellaneous, and so I'm going to go down and pick. So I'm saying, is the 1099 type equal to miscellaneous? And then really what I want to know is, do I have their tax ID number? And so I'm just going to say if the tax ID number is blank, and those will be my problem vendors where I paid them more than 600, I've set them up to get a 1099, but I don't have their tax number in the system yet. Now, it could be sitting on my desk, so that's fine, but I want the software to tell me if I have a problem here. And so when I query that back, you'll see I actually do have a few problems. And so now I can save this and make this available to me or to others in the system, and we'll say product tour, and we'll just call it that. And here's where I decide who I want to have availability of this, so I'll just let everybody be able to use it. And so I'm going to add it as a favorite, so in other words it'll remember it, but I want to put a reminder on my home page, and I want to tell the software, I want you to put this on my home page when the number of records is greater than 0. So if there's even one vendor in here that's a problem, I want it on my home page. And I'm going to display that as a queue because I like looking at pictures more than just raw data. And so we'll say okay. And so that will put that onto my home page. But this is good. This tells me I have a problem, but it really doesn't do anything to fix it. And so it just kind of at this point dies off here and lets me decide what do I need to do now to to get these tax ID numbers. And so, but here's where we're going to use the integration with Microsoft Word. And so Microsoft has built and ships about 50 or 60 letter templates with the Smart List. And you can go in and edit those. If you don't like anything they've done, you can ignore what they have. You can build your own from scratch. You can edit theirs to your own liking. That's what most people do. You can copy theirs and create 10 out of one template that they've done. But I'm just showing you what's there kind of out of the box today. And it senses we're in the vendor section here, the system, so it's offering up a vendor letter. And I'm going to say yes. I happen to know that they already have a request for the W-9, which is where people tell us what their tax ID number is. And so we're going to just send that out. Now it's looking at the list saying, hey, everybody needs to go on the list. Well, maybe I just talk to these guys on the phone. They're going to send it over. So I'm only going to do those 4. And then how do we want that signed? And we'll just say, I'll make myself the CFO today. And so when I click finish, then we do a mail merge between the Dynamics GP data and the template and Microsoft Word. And of course that's over here on another screen. And so here's what we get from the merge. And I should have 4 of these. You'll see I've got the template here for the letter and the signature that I just put in, signature line, and I've got 4 of them because I had these 4 vendors ticked off. And so from here, same thing as in Excel. This is all just Word, and so I can do whatever I would normally do here in Word and make any kind of edits. And I would then just either print these, I might email them, I might scan them, I might fax them. However I normally communicate with my vendors from Microsoft Word, I could do this. And so that's a whole lot faster than having to call these guys or type individual notices. It's just so much quicker and easier, and that way they all look alike, and so we don't have any misspellings or anything because we're using the template. Okay, so this I added to my home page as a queue, so I'm just going to toggle off and back on the home page so that it refreshes here. And so now you'll see, I've done this before I guess, so now you'll see I've got a visual queue versus just the raw data, and it says GP Product Tour. And so when I click on that, and it told me there were 7 in my list, and so when I click on that, it opens my Smart List, and sure enough I've got those 7. Now as people send in their form and I go in and put their tax ID number into their vendor setup, then of course that vendor would drop off the list. If there's no records that meet the criteria, then I won't have the visual queue. It'll be gone. And so this is a really powerful area to actually have the software tell us what's happening under the hood. And so at this point I'm going to move off the home page and I'm going to toggle over to purchasing just so you can kind of see how the rest of the modules look here. Now I have cleaned up this page a little bit because there's some things that I don't use, and so you'll notice here that when I put everything back, kind of the same ideas, everything for purchasing, which is purchase order, my requisitions, my accounts payable and payments and so forth, 1099 processing and all that. Everything to do with purchasing is pulled onto my page now because I toggled away from home over to purchasing. And so here, if there's things that I don't use, kind of like my home page, and I'll just take these 3 off again. And so that just clears the page, keeps it nice and neat and orderly. And remember, this doesn't have anything to do with any other user. This is just my page, and I'm the only one that's making changes to my layout and kind of how the software looks and feels to me. And so here, we can handle everything we normally would with vendors. I'm going to go into the inquiry here and really just pick on one window. And this is kind of, this is called our all-in-one view. And this is really a snapshot of everything by vendor, what's going on. And so I'll just go pick a vendor here. I think I've got some activity on this guy. And so what we want to do though is I want to make sure that I've got all of my history in here, and so I want to see everything, even saved, shipments and invoices, all the way back to purchase orders. I want to see historical POs. I want to see all of my posted or historical payments. And so I want kind of everything. Same thing with returns, which I probably don't have too many returns, but yeah. And so this really is allowing me as the user now to say from any angle or any direction I can get into vendor information. So I might know an invoice number and I could drill into the vendor based on an invoice number. I might only know payment information, and so we'll actually start with that. So I know the payment, we'll just pick on this 252 here, and when I tick that, now you see that the screen is cleared to the left, and all of the documents that are hooked ultimately into that payment are the only ones that show up. And so the vendor's invoice right here is actually being paid. And so, you know, that stays on the screen. The receipt from the purchase order, because I actually did a PO that was received that eventually became a vendor invoice that eventually got paid. So that's why we call it the all-in-one view, because all of those things that are hooked to this payment for $455.36, all of those things now are linked, and I can see those very, very quickly. So I'm not digging through file cabinets and trying to sort through paper or asking people, hey, do you know where that PO is? It's missing or maybe misfiled. No, none of that. So you'll see that the check here was written for $455.36. That was the amount of the invoice. That was the amount of the receiving transaction. And luckily enough, I knew the correct pricing when I did my PO, and that was the amount on the purchase order. And so you see that that all is connected and flows through. And so that's good. Now I might want to see some of this stuff. Well, remember the blue underline, and so I can drill down on any of these. This is the payment, and so I'm seeing the payment in history. And it was a check drawn on Uptown Trust Bank. It was my check 20034. There's the amount. I can click on apply. Now I happen to know the invoice because I could see that on the all-in-one screen, but if there were a bunch of invoices going into this check, all of those invoices, of course, would be listing here under the apply button, and so I can see everything to do with this payment. Now I can click on the recreate check stub, send that out to the screen, and this shows me the stub, and of course if I had lots of other invoices being paid, they would all be listed here in the additional voucher area. And so, you know, if the vendor needed a copy of the stub, or they didn't know what we were paying, or they didn't apply it right, we can very quickly do that. Click the send to, send that out to them in email right while we're on the phone, and the task is done. We don't have to get up and go digging through file cabinets, anything like that. And so if I know the invoice and I want to drill down on the invoice, this takes me back to the invoice. So this is where the voucher actually got in, and of course I knew already that it was from purchase order 2064, so I can do that. And so it's very efficient, very easy to get through to the data and find out where we're at, everything that's going on. Occasionally we'll want to attach documents, and so let me go back to what we already looked at here with the payables entry. And so I might want to put something onto this transaction, and so you'll notice I've got an attached paperclip up here, which is kind of the lifelong image of the Olay attachment or container way back in the day. I'm actually hooked up to a scanner today, and Dynamics GP senses that, and I have it set up twice just so it'll stop at this screen, and I'll say okay, and it goes and checks the scanner, because I can scan directly into the software. And so now this really isn't designed to go off for approval and go through 10 different steps and then come back as an approved transaction. We do have those features, but that's not part of the core system. That's an add-on, which means we pay a little extra for that. But out of the box stuff, I can scan multiple pages directly into the system here. If I've already got something scanned, which I'll assume here that I do, and let me go back into just get some, there's a PDF, and so we'll bring that in, and of course we could bring in, you know, any number of things here. So if we wanted to, those are all images, I guess, so we could bring in really virtually any type of electronic document. And so once the system has this image, even if that original gets deleted, it's still in Dynamics GP, and because of that we can actually open it and view it. So there's the PDF, which is actually our real W9 there from well, not too long ago. So you know, very easy to do that, and that stays a permanent part of the record forever and ever and ever. And we always have that available to us to look at even, you know, 10 years down the road in history. So a couple of very quick last things is Microsoft, because they own Excel, they're very good about sending some additional dashboard reports for us. And so you'll see there's a couple hundred Excel reports available in the system as well. So I think that's maybe our fourth or fifth way to actually report and look at data. I'm not going to really open the reports, but I do want to open just the dashboard here so you can kind of see what they've built for us. And so, and again, this is just really to kind of get us going. There it is. And so we can edit these, we can change them up, we can do really whatever we want with them, but what you're seeing is kind of how it comes out of the box. And so, you know, if I've got vendors in the system, then it'll populate with my balances. If I happen to use the PO part of the software, then the purchase order information will show up as well. If I decide to use the requisitions, this is a list of all my requisitions that have been submitted. This is not just me, and I only saw me on my home page. This is everybody. So these are all the requisitions across the company here. Outstanding purchase orders with detailed line items, vendor balances. Again, you know, any of these can be changed up to your own liking. So lots and lots of people use the dashboards. Of course, lots of people make them their own. And if we go over to the finance page, you'll see also a number of Excel reports and a dashboard. There's a dashboard in every module: inventory, purchasing, receivables, so in sales, financial, you name it, there's a dashboard. And so here's the financial dashboard, which just kind of shows us a snapshot here, profit and loss, some operating expense information. We're doing some ratio calculations, pulling out checkbook balances. Again, if you have an executive that's constantly asking for this stuff, this is a pretty quick and easy way to provide it, and they don't have to bug the accountants anymore. So I'm set here at second quarter 2016. If I want to see second quarter 2015, just toggle that back. All of the data refreshes. What if I want to see these 6 quarters together? Well, very easily done. And that would take several reports sometimes to be able to get our hands on that data that quick and easy for you know, different periods. And of course, I've got mine set to quarters, but you know, this is just Excel functionality. The slider bar isn't anything to do with GP. It's just we put the slider, Microsoft put the slider bar on the GP data for us. And so there's all my ratios. Here's a schedule of kind of what's going into net income, showing each and every account. So more kind of hardcore accounting data. There's a revenue snapshot, again with the GL accounts that are providing the revenue numbers for us, cost of goods, operating expenses, and just kind of a raw dump of the data if we want to make our own charts and graphs. So very last thing here before we see if there's any questions. Occasionally we'll do journal entries or we'll do calculations in Excel, and in this case I just did a simple entry, but a lot of times we have a you know, a bonus calculation or commissions or something like that, and we build all this up in Excel. Well, that's fine, but that doesn't really get the information into GP. Not that we can't import those things, but journal entries is kind of got its own little special option here. And so let me toggle over to my financial page and my journal transaction. And so if I was going to do a journal entry here as an option, I could come in, that's my dashboard, I could come into my journal entry where I've worked it up in Excel. I'll just highlight and copy. So simple stuff there, just Alt-C. I can come in here, click paste, and then that entry paste right into the journal entry screen for me. And so no need to key that in, and that works if it's a few lines like mine, or if it's 1,000 lines, I can paste it in just that quickly. And so, you know, that's just another little Microsoft connection that, you know, they realize a lot of us still use Excel, and sometimes we work up numbers that need to go in the system, and so we can bring those things in very, very quickly like that. So I think that's about where we'll stop. Ashley, are there any questions in the queue, or anybody that is dying to see something again or different?
Right now, it doesn't look like we have any questions that were submitted, but for those that are still listening, if you want to submit a question, you can do so on the panel, on the GoToWebinar panel, and Bryan will be able to answer them here. But if you have questions after the GoToWebinar session, we can follow up with you via email as well.
Yeah, so you know, that's a pretty fast, high-level overview, just touching on really just a handful of the things that are in the system. And everything you saw there is out of the box. There's nothing more to buy. That all comes with the software, and we didn't touch really on payroll or HR, but that's part of it. Fixed assets with depreciation integrated to the GL, and purchasing, purchase order, AP. You know, that's all part of the core system as well. So lots and lots of other things that we could do. You know, not everybody uses every component of the software, of course, and so, but hopefully, you know, that gave you a little bit of a kind of whet your appetite, as we say, on what GP 2016 R2 looks and feels like, and some of the things that we can do with the software. So Ashley, if we don't have anything else, I think I've said everything I know, and some of it twice. So
Great, thanks, Bryan. Yeah, and this session was recorded, so everyone can expect to see a link to the recording via email after the session. Thanks, Bryan.
okay, thank you. Bye, everyone.